Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the ancient and honestly mind-bending wisdom of the Mahaprajnaparamita. Yeah, it's a massive name for a genuinely profound text. Translated by Kumarajiva and attributed to the legendary philosopher Nagarjuna, this thing might be centuries old, but as you'll see, it's literally a masterclass in navigating the overthinking and deep-seated anxieties of our modern lives. We're going to explore how shifting our perspective from illusion to ultimate reality can absolutely change how we experience the world. Okay, let's dive into this. Is the universe finite or is it infinite? Is the human soul permanent or completely impermanent? Our minds desperately crave absolute black and white answers to these massive binary questions. We just want to categorize existence neatly so it makes sense. But according to the text, this exact craving, this endless grasping for certainty where there really isn't any, is exactly what causes our perpetual restlessness.
So, to get us to a place of true clarity, here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the restless mind, move through deconstructing illusions and the true mark of reality, look at the mother of Buddhas, and finally wrap up with the incomprehensible wisdom and awakening to the truth. Don't worry, I'll guide you safely through all this heavy philosophical territory.
Starting off with part 1, the restless human mind. The psychology in this 4th century text is absolutely brilliant. Long before modern therapy even existed, the Buddha perfectly observed how our minds are constantly fluctuating through 4 specific reactive states: exiting, submerging, bending, and stretching. Think about it. We submerge ourselves in the daily grind, the stress, the endless doom scrolling, or we try exiting the world entirely through extreme views or temporary escapes. Just look at your own week. How often do you cycle between submerging yourself in stress and then stretching or exiting just to find a little temporary relief? It's a relentless cycle, right?
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how beautifully vivid this 1600-year-old metaphor is. The text compares us to fish in a clear pool. Some of us stay hidden deep down in the murky waters of worldly attachment. Some pop up briefly, catching a quick glimpse of the truth, only to dive right back down into our everyday distractions. Others emerge to look around in all 4 directions, seeking answers. And then some actually swim right up to the shore, totally ready to cross over into true understanding. But then they retreat back into the depths out of fear and doubt. It just perfectly captures how we constantly flirt with finding peace, but then fall right back into our illusions and overthinking.
And that retreat? Well, it usually lands us right back in the trap of binary thinking. The text points out that we get ensnared in what it calls wrong views. Basically, we either think our identity, our soul, is totally permanent, which makes us stress endlessly about securing future rewards, or on the flip side, we decide it's entirely impermanent, which makes us chase meaningless, short-term worldly gains, because hey, nothing matters anyway, right? Both of these extremes, the text argues, completely miss the actual reality of our existence.
Which brings us to part 2, deconstructing our illusions. Time to find the middle way.
To actually free ourselves from these traps, the text uses this razor-sharp analytical approach to break down what we think we are into the 5 aggregates. These are our physical form, our feelings, our perceptions, our mental formations or thoughts, and our basic consciousness. The text is super definitive here. It says that all our worldly anxieties and rigid views are based entirely on a massive mistake. We mistakenly identify these 5 temporary, constantly shifting elements as our true, unchanging self or soul. We basically string a bunch of temporary experiences together and just slap a permanent label on them. And this brilliantly illustrates the danger of that exact mistake. The text uses this wild analogy of a blind man who stumbles upon a deadly snake. Because he can't see it clearly, he actually mistakes it for a beautiful, precious necklace. He puts it on, wearing it proudly, completely oblivious to the danger he's in. And honestly, we're exactly like that blind man. We hold on so tightly to the illusions of the world, thinking our temporary identities and desires are incredibly precious, until the Buddha's wisdom finally gives us sight, allowing us to drop the dangerous illusion before we get bitten. So once we deconstruct the idea of the self, the text goes ahead and deconstructs the world around us. Remember our hook from earlier, the whole finite world versus infinite world debate? Well, the text completely dismantles both of those extremes, trying to pinpoint a definitive beginning or edge to the universe, or just assuming it stretches on infinitely. These are both flawed human attempts to categorize something that completely defies our mental frameworks. They're literally just concepts we project onto reality so we can feel some false sense of control. All right, moving right along to part 3, the true mark of reality. Let's step beyond those boundaries. So, if all our categories and boundaries are just illusions, what's actually real? Well, the text calls this ultimate reality suchness, or tatata. It describes it as uncorrupted, undifferentiated, formless, beyond memory, and completely beyond our playful words and intellectual debates. But there's this really beautiful irony here. As we sit here talking about formlessness, we can still deeply appreciate the breathtaking visual forms of reality all around us. The text teaches that the suchness of our daily, tangible experiences, the actual form of things, is the exact same thing as ultimate reality. It isn't some mystical, separate dimension. It's right here, just stripped of all our exhausting mental labels. The mark of emptiness is the mark of profound prajnaparamita. Now, I really need to clarify something absolutely crucial here. When we say emptiness, we are not talking about some dark, depressing, nihilistic void. Not at all. It's actually a state of boundless freedom. It means that reality is empty of our rigid definitions, our limiting beliefs, and those binary traps we talked about. And because it's empty of our human projections, it's actually full of infinite possibility. This takes us into part 4, the mother of Buddhas. This realization of emptiness is so profound that it requires a very specific kind of wisdom to even grasp it. The text states emphatically, Prajnaparamita is the mother of Buddhas. For context, Prajnaparamita translates to the perfection of wisdom. All Buddhas, past, present, and future, revere, respect, and absolutely rely on this specific wisdom. And why is that? Because it is literally what gives birth to their awakened state. Without this perfection of wisdom, there simply is no awakening, period. So the crucial point is, why is this wisdom so highly revered? Well, because it reveals the world's absolute emptiness. It decisively severs all 62 of the wrong views that constantly tie human minds in knots. It allows you to completely transcend worldly attachments. It essentially acts as the ultimate antidote to that restless human mind we discussed at the very beginning of this explainer, finally opening up the one true path to ultimate liberation. Now, let's look at part 5, the incomprehensible wisdom, going way beyond ordinary thought.
But what does this wisdom actually feel like? How do we even measure it? Well, as we're about to see, trying to measure it is entirely the wrong approach. The text outlines the attributes of this supreme wisdom, and honestly, they are all inspiring. It is incomprehensible, meaning it completely bypasses our ordinary conceptual thought. It is unweighable. It cannot be evaluated by any of our standard metrics. It's immeasurable and it is totally unequaled. Nothing compares to it. The text emphasizes that this wisdom is necessary for a great matter, which is the monumental task of saving and liberating all sentient beings. It just goes so far beyond our ordinary human logic that it literally defies language itself.
Just think about how our modern minds work for a second. We love to measure, weigh, and quantify everything, right? Our success, our intelligence, our daily progress. But the text insists that applying this mindset to ultimate reality is a total fool's errand. Comparing our human attempts to measure things against ultimate reality is like, well, it's like trying to use a 12-inch ruler to measure the vastness of the night sky. True wisdom is completely, gloriously unquantifiable. As the text puts it, like empty space, it is incomprehensible, unweighable, and immeasurable. I want to invite you just for a moment right now to take a deep breath. Just imagine your own mind expanding outward, becoming exactly like this vast, unweighable empty space. Imagine just dropping all those heavy labels, the anxieties, and the rigid identities you carry around every single day. That sudden feeling of release, that's just a tiny, fleeting glimpse of Prajnaparamita. And that brings us to our final section, part 6, Awakening to the Truth. So what actually happens when this deep philosophical journey meets real-world application? Does this stuff actually change anyone? Look at this number on the screen, 500. According to the text, the exact moment this teaching on incomprehensible wisdom was delivered, 500 monks attained arhatship instantly. No way, right? But it means they achieved complete, immediate freedom from all their mental outflows and worldly attachments, just by hearing and truly grasping this reality. Let's move to and see how this builds, because the ripple effect was absolutely massive. It wasn't just 500 monks. 20 nuns also attained arhatship on the spot. But incredibly, 60,000 laymen and 30,000 laywomen awakened their dharma eye, meaning they gained true spiritual insight. These weren't isolated ascetics meditating in caves for decades. These were nearly 100,000 everyday ordinary people living busy lives in the real world who transformed their minds entirely. And they did this simply by shifting their perspective from the illusion of the self in the world to the profound reality of suchness.
Which brings us to the end of our explainer and to a question I really want to leave you with today. Think about the specific anxieties you woke up with this morning. If the self you've been so fiercely protecting is ultimately an illusion, and the reality we actually inhabit is as boundless and unweighable as empty space, what is truly weighing down your mind today? Take that thought with you, let it challenge your perspective, and perhaps let it bring you a profound sense of peace. Thanks for joining me.